Hi guys, so this week we are talking about how to identify and draw 3D forms. So we all know our shapes by now, you guys are old kids, but if I draw like say a circle, that is a 2D shape because it's flat. It has height and it has width, but it doesn't have depth, right? If I draw a square, same thing. It's got height and width, but it doesn't have depth. It's just a flat space, so it's 2D. We want to make our shapes look 3D, like they're popping out at us and like they have some form. So if I draw a cube, it has height, it has width, and it has depth back this way, right? So these things look three-dimensional, even though that they're two-dimensional on our paper, they're flat, we can't hold them in our hands. We're making them look three-dimensional using a couple of different tricks, right? And there is a 3D shape that corresponds, or a 3D form that corresponds with every single 2D shape. So for example, we have a circle that's 2D, but then if we shade it in a certain way to make it look 3D, then we have a 3D sphere, right? So one element is drawing our shapes a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you how to draw all of these shapes. Another element is, of course, our shading. So with a rounded object, we want to make sure that we're making it look like light is hitting that object so that it has some form to it. So with rounded objects, I like to have a dark area right here where it's the darkest. It's the furthest away from my light that's shining on it. So my light's maybe coming from this direction. So I'm going to make the area of my shape farthest away from my light, the darkest. I'm going to choose to do this area medium tone, and then this the very lightest. And ideally, you wouldn't want to just do dark, medium, light. You would want to get all the shades in between those so that these areas blend together really well. So I would have maybe like 6 or 7 different values of light and dark in one shape to make it look like it's really smoothly transitioning and that it's a three-dimensional object. It has some form to it, okay? So the basics of drawing all of our 3D forms, and if you want to, I would look back at slide number 3 if you haven't tried this yet. So let's start out with our sphere, right? We said that a sphere, we basically just draw a circle. Now, something that I like to do, because it's very clear that Mrs. Turner can't draw a perfect circle freehand, who can? I like to get an object that's round and trace around the bottom to get my perfect circle. If we can use something to help us draw, we should. All right. So now I have a circle. I didn't do the best job tracing that. But like I said, with a sphere, it's more about the shading than it is adding anything extra to this shape to make it look 3D. So I'm going to draw some curved lines for myself as a guide where I should shade. So this is going to be my lightest area. My light's coming from this way. This is going to be all of my medium tones, and this is going to be all of my dark tones, okay? I like to start my shading with any material, not just pencil, in my dark area and see how dark I can get that. And then I'm using less pressure with my pencil as I move towards my lighted area. So again, we should see not just dark, medium, light, but lots of dark tones, lots of medium tones, and lots of light tones. Now, the key with this is making sure that all of your values are curving along with your object, okay? It's not going to look three-dimensional if I color it in stripes like this, right? So for a cube, which is our 3D form of a square, I like to start out by drawing one square here in the middle about the size that I want my cube to be. And then I find the very middle point of my square right there. And that's where the bottom left corner or bottom right corner of my second square is going to be. So now I'm going to draw 2 squares that are intersecting each other. You can see they're crossing over each other right here. Now all I have to do is connect all of my corners. So I'm going to connect this corner, going to connect this corner, this one, and this one. And that is how you would draw a rectangular prism as well. You would just make your first shape a rectangle, then you would find the middle of your rectangle, make your second rectangle, and then connect all your corners. I'm being a little bit sloppy about this. You would obviously do your best job if you're drawing your forms for your project. 2 more shapes we need to talk about. One of them is a cone, which is the 3D version of a triangle. And I like to start my cones by drawing the top of a triangle like this. And then the bottom, instead of being a flat, straight across line, is a really thin little pancake. Like this. It's like a flat oval. Now, something that I see a lot of my students doing, a mistake that I see them doing, is drawing their oval way too big, okay? That doesn't look 3-dimensional because your oval is too fat. It's got to be really thin as you can get it. And then we're going to, of course, erase out our lines inside. So all you're left with is a triangle top with a slightly curved bottom. So if you feel confident and just want to draw the top of the triangle and then a curve along the bottom, you can do that too. You don't have to draw the little pancake. For this next shape, you do have to draw the little pancake. So I'm going to draw one pancake up here at the top. And again, I'm making it really thin. Your pancake shouldn't look like this. That's still too thick. That would look like we're looking down on something like this. If you can see too much of the top of something, it looks like you're looking down on that object. So from the sides of this, I'm just going to draw down 2 straight lines. And this is our cylinder. So it's rounded. And then I'm just gonna draw either another little pancake at the bottom here to connect them, or I can just connect them with a curved line. So now we've kind of reviewed how to draw our basic forms: a sphere, a cube, a rectangular prism, a cone, and a cylinder. So those are all of our major 3D forms. Now, if you want to get fancy and creative, you can always try to draw something from observation as well. But this week, we want you to make up your artwork out of as many different forms as you can. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down the center of my artwork for all of those objects, all of those forms to sit on. We don't want them to look like they're floating in space. We know we need a horizon line in the background for these objects to sit on. So this is going to be like my surface, okay? And then I'm just going to start drawing some of my forms as big as I can, and I'm obviously using pencil to start because, as you can see, I go over and over my lines to make sure I get the right shape that I want. And I'm making these forms as big as I can because you guys know that part of using your best craftsmanship is filling your paper super well. So if I draw all of my shapes this big in the middle, then I have so much background space to deal with, and we're just wasting that space on our paper. So it's better to draw your forms really big than to draw them tiny. Now, the key with this project is going to be overlapping our forms, and this helps them look even more realistic because things that have depth, like we talked about, shapes only have height and width, but things with depth go in front of each other, right? But when they're overlapping, that's one of the tools that we use in art to show that things have form, is overlapping. So some of your shapes need to be overlapping each other. You can see that the shape that's in front of my cylinder, my sphere, is lower than my sphere is. So I started the bottom down here because it's in front of this object. If I started it right next to it and went in front of it, say the bottom of my sphere was right here, and I'm showing that it's overlapping, that looks a little bit funny, doesn't it? Because those objects are at the same level, so it's like, why are those overlapping? Are these things see-through? Are they going into each other? So any object that is overlapping the one behind it needs to be a little bit lower than the one behind it, okay? So I would fill the rest of my paper with as many shapes as it takes to fill my space really well. And then I'm gonna use either crayon or colored pencil or just my pencil and use my pressure value shading to go from dark to light. Remember that all of your 3D forms need to have their lightest area on the same side. So I'm not going to make like this my lightest area of my cylinder and this my lightest area of my sphere. I'm not going to make this the lightest area of my sphere and this the lightest area of my cylinder, because my light is coming from this direction or this direction. It can't be coming from both. So all of the three-dimensional forms that you draw need to have the same side of them be their light side. So like this would be the light side of my cylinder. This would be the light spot on my cube. Remember, or on my sphere, remember that anytime we draw cubes or rectangular prisms that have these flat sides on them, we don't do our values in stripes like this. We pick one side to be our darkest side, one side to be our medium, and one side to be our light, okay? We can't wait to see how your arrangement of forms turns out this week and how you choose to add value either with color or just with your standard pencil. We hope you guys have a lot of fun playing with 3D forms this week, and we can't wait to see what you make. Bye.